With adventurous stories and heartwarming themes of self-realization and exploration combined with his love for innovative technology, American filmmaker Robert Zemeckis introduced to us worlds that were the epitome of the impossible and uncanny. Yet these films of his made a huge impact to the world of film and the world many of us grew up in. It is no doubt that Robert Zemeckis did have a penchant for playfulness and the unusual, but he is one of the few filmmakers that was not afraid to incorporate this affinity of his into cinema in a way that would make heads turn because of its eccentricity. In this video essay, we will be exploring the world of Zemeckis using Andrew Sarris' Auteur Theory, which is a film criticism theory that looks at films in a way that the director is the author of their work and is a reflection of their artistic direction. In order to analyze this in such a way that this would reflect Zemeckis' artistic identity while using films that were made in different points of his career, we chose 3 of his films that we believe best summarizes his identity as a filmmaker he has made so far. The mentioned films are namely a 1980s sci-fi classic, Back to the Future, which is also known for being a part of one of the most highly approved trilogies, Forrest Gump, an award-winning comedy drama film with sentimental themes set in 20th century America, released in 1994, and lastly one of Zemeckis' newer films, which was released in 2015, The Walk, which is a 3D biographical drama film based on the story of French high-wire artist Philippe Petit's walk between the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in 1974. Despite working with different genres, Robert Zemeckis' films contain recognizable themes and visual cues that make up his artistic identity as a filmmaker that can even be discussed beyond the auteur theory, which we will be doing so towards the end of the video. With that in mind, here is Robert Zemeckis in the eyes of the auteur theory, where we will be analyzing and breaking down his technical competence, personal style, and interior meanings reflected in his films.
In 1978, at age 26, Robert Zemeckis made his directorial debut with I Wanna Hold Your Hand, a film for which he and Bob Gale again teamed up to write the screenplay. Although having a low budget, the film ended up displaying Zemeckis' ability to integrate great live-action sequences with elaborate special effects. Zemeckis proceeded to direct the semi-successful film such as Used Cars and Romancing the Stone. However, in 1985, Zemeckis directed the film that would launch his career, Back to the Future. The film, which stars Michael J. Fox, which centers on a teenager who accidentally uses a DeLorean time machine to travel back to 1955. The inspiration for the film came from co-writer Bob Gale, which Robert Zemeckis also co-wrote, who was one day looking through his father's high school yearbook. Gale ended up wondering if he would have been friends with his teenage father. The film, which won 1 Oscar for Best Effects and Sound Effects Editing, became a huge box office success, grossing close to $200 billion in the US alone. Because of this success, the film spawned 2 sequels, both directed by Zemeckis and starring most of the same actors and actresses from the first installment. The Back to the Future trilogy, for which Zemeckis is most known, is today regarded as one of the greatest trilogies to come out of the film industry. After the Back to the Future trilogy, Zemeckis' next major film was Forrest Gump, a film about a simple and not so very intelligent man, Tom Hanks, who accidentally becomes involved in some of the major historical events of the United States. It ended up winning 6 Oscars, with Zemeckis winning an Oscar for Best Director. Tom Hanks has also received the 2nd Academy Award for Best Actor in a Leading Role. A few years after Forrest Gump, Zemeckis again teamed up with Tom Hanks in Castaway, a film about a FedEx executive who accidentally gets stranded on a remote desert island after his plane crashes in the Pacific Ocean. This film was well received by critics, audiences, and at the box office. The picture also received 2 Oscar nominations, Tom Hanks again for Best Leading Actor, and the film has also won an Oscar for Best Sound. 4 years later, Zemeckis again cast Tom Hanks in the animated feature, The Polar Express, a film about a doubting boy who travels on a train headed to the North Pole on Christmas Eve. The Polar Express is most significantly known for being the first ever animated film to use motion capture, a technique that captures the movements of physical actors. In this case, the motion capture tracked the actors' movements, then converted them to their animated forms. The film was mostly well received and was nominated for 3 Oscars: Best Achievement in Music, Best Achievement in Sound Mixing, and Best Achievement in Sound Editing. As you can see, Robert Zemeckis is a big-name director who has proven himself several times to be able to produce heartfelt films with great visual effects. Starting with Back to the Future, he has built himself a very impressive resume. Zemeckis' greatest films may be behind him, but nevertheless, it will be interesting to see what the future holds, especially with newer technologies being developed each year.
Robert Zemeckis' personal style in directing films is very complex. He doesn't focus on only one subject, hence he has directed many different genres such as romance, comedy, science fiction, adventure, fantasy, drama, and thriller. Likewise, he is well known for his consistent focus on the isolation of the individual in modern society, which are exhibited in his films like Back to the Future, Forrest Gump, The Walk, and many more. He was able to master combining popular appeal and individual expression in his films, as well as presenting troubling ideas about the American culture. Thus, he has created some of the most popular films that altered the dimensions of American movies. Also, he was able to embrace technological change in his films, specifically Back to the Future.
Back to the Future's interior meaning is self-confidence. Robert Zemeckis focuses Marty's future father, George McFly. He shows the movie's main conflict, which is George's biggest issue of not defending himself from Biff, the high school bully. Additionally, him being uncomfortable about being a nerd. It's crucial to accept who you are and stand out for yourself, whether at work or in school. In the next movie of Robert Zemeckis, Forrest Gump, even the worst kind of suffering can be turned into something positive. Forrest is devastated when Jenny left him. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, he runs. He's not running away but towards a new goal of changing the world or becomes famous. Forrest did all these things out of sadness. Sometimes, even when they weren't planned, the things we do when we're feeling particularly depressed might have a positive income. Director Robert Zemeckis shows us that life is really unpredictable. Lastly, in the movie The Walk, Philip lost his footing during training because he believed that he had reached his target 3 steps earlier than he actually had. Because they believe that they have arrived when they are still on the wire. Most wire walkers die when they arrive, he heard from Papa Rudy. During his first public performance, Philip became distracted by the taunts and laughter of the fishermen. It takes both mental and physical strength to walk on the wire. Philip's lack of focus caused him to lose his balance, which caused him to fall into the lake.
Apart from using the defined structure of the Auteur Theory, analyzing Robert Zemeckis as a director and his films will be more effective if it will be studied beyond what the Auteur Theory suggests. To put it plainly, we will now be analyzing Robert Zemeckis in terms of the common themes, deeper messages, and the core ideas that he consistently wants to convey in his films. Starting with Back to the Future 1, the general themes of this film revolves around choosing courage, looking beyond situations, and having limitless determination. To understand these themes further, in the context of the film, it is all about Marty making conscious efforts in fixing the future by 1. Ensuring that Dr. Brown will not be killed, and 2. Ensuring that Marty himself will be alive in the future. With a series of obstacles such as a lack of resources from the past and Marty's younger version of his mom having a crush on him, the said protagonist did not hesitate to continue solving the conflict and moving forward. For Forrest Gump, certain mindsets such as looking at bad situations in a different light, choosing to have a childlike wonder, and being willing to take risks are highlighted throughout the film. Considering all the major turning points in Forrest's life, such as having an intellectual disability, being bullied, being involved in the military, being a father, and having his great love Jenny dead, Forrest chooses to continue with life with genuine acceptance. With this, we are reminded to view things in life as opportunities to grow. In The Walk, the entire film revolved around the significance of keeping the flame of passion burning, dreaming big, and not being turned down by judgments and negative situations. Even if Felipe's dream to walk across 2 high towers through a line can be deemed impossible and illegal, his self-trust and self-confidence gave him the ticket to achieving it with flying colors. Thus, The Walk echoes the idea that choosing to believe that you can do it is the main ingredient to success. Moving on, after analyzing the general themes of the 3 films, it is evident that all of them tackle the concept of exploring the self, determination and perseverance, and balanced optimism. With the Back to the Future 1, Forrest Gump, and The Walk, it can be said that Robert Zemeckis consistently tells stories that make people reflect and evaluate oneself with the hopes to make them realize that the way we live is dependent on how we think it is and how we act on it. With Zemeckis' films, we are able to realize that the light at the end of the tunnel can be genuinely experienced if we acknowledge our own flaws, challenges, and problems in life with courage, acceptance, and forward thinking.
For over 40 years, Robert Zemeckis has made all sorts of impacts to the film industry and American pop culture with his various experimentations of incorporating newly introduced technology onto film and his brilliant skill in storytelling through film direction. Not only was he accomplished in using visual effects in film, but the use of them changed our perspective of technology and allowed room for discussion and discourse. Throughout his career, Robert Zemeckis' name as a filmmaker has left both good and bad impressions on his audiences. Although many acknowledge his blockbuster classics such as Back to the Future and Who Framed Roger Rabbit to even be considered masterpieces, Zemeckis also has a number of films which are infamous, such as The Polar Express, which was ridiculed for its CGI that looked so unrealistically realistic that it came off as creepy, and Beowulf, in which his most negative reviews expressed that its animation was uncanny and the characters were not as expressive. However, a director should not be defined by the number of good or bad films they have made, but rather the impact they leave to their audiences and film itself. Zemeckis was a pioneer for visual effects and was not afraid to incorporate and experiment with new technology and techniques onto his movies. Even with the messiest of his mistakes is what makes Zemeckis a very good director, as he has continuously shown us that taking chances, no matter how obscure they may seem, is what makes huge impacts, and without Zemeckis taking those chances, the world of film would have been a lot more boring.